Did you ever have... I knew I was watching the monitor. Only at the beginning can we do that.
Roll credits.
Hey, did you ever have a time in your life that was so amazingly life-changing that you said, man, I need to write a book about this? Well, guess what? Our next author did exactly that. Wait until you hear her story. My name is Vin Dacquino. Her name is Jennifer Degl. Jennifer.
Hello, how are you?
Let's talk writing.
How are you?
You've written a wonderful book, but it wasn't an easy road. You've written some sometimes painful things in this book. Tell me, who is Jennifer Degl, and how did you get to write this wonderful book?
Okay, well, I am a science teacher by trade. I've been teaching at Mahopac High School for 16 years.
Oh, wow.
And, science courses, not English. I'm not a writer, in training at least. But because of the birth of my daughter and everything that transpired to get her to where she is today, I decided to write her story to share with other families and other mothers to give them hope.
So, in a nutshell, her story begins with entering the stage a little too early.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that. What happened here?
Okay, I have now I have 4 children. At the time when I was pregnant with my daughter, her name is Joy, I had 3 boys. And very early on in my pregnancy with Joy, I was diagnosed with placenta previa, which in summary can be, moderate to severe or partial to complete. And I had the complete version. So basically, I was hemorrhaging, lots of hemorrhaging, lots of blood transfusions. And to summarize it, I was in and out of the hospital for 2 months prior to her birth,
Wow.
which was extremely early.
Wow. So about how many months were you pregnant before you realized all this was going on?
I was only 17 weeks pregnant
Wow.
when I had the first hemorrhage. Each time was a hospital visit.
Right.
Each time more blood transfusions, and it was really difficult and a lot of effort on all the doctor's parts and my part to remain pregnant even for 23 weeks, which is how
Right.
old she was when she was born.
Now, were you bedridden for that time?
I was from 17 weeks to 23.
Wow.
I was
And she was born at 23 weeks?
23 weeks and a couple of days. Yeah, she was 1 pound and 4 ounces.
Oh, my God.
If I had a ruler, I would have held it up for you because she was only 11 inches long, so less than a ruler.
My God. And
Yeah.
this little tiger, didn't matter. She's in good shape now?
She's doing great. She's just turned 2 in May.
Thank
She's
God.
doing wonderful. Yeah.
Thank God. Shows you those fighters.
Yes.
You can't keep them down.
That's true.
And you named her Joy.
We did. Yeah.
Good choice.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So there were some trying times, and to top it all off, how old were your 3 boys at this time?
Well, at that time, my older son was 7, and then I had a 5, and my younger son had just turned 3.
7, 5, and 3.
Yes.
And now you're facing this little girl.
Yes.
1 pound.
4 ounces.
4
Yeah.
ounces, and this kid has to make it through. So you're in your head. You're worried about those 3 boys. You're worried about your husband. You're worried about your life. You're worried about your school.
Yes.
You would still you're teaching at the time.
I was teaching up till then. Yeah.
When was she born? What was her birthday?
She's May 12th.
May 12th. So school was well underway.
Oh, yeah.
Wow, that's hard.
It was very scary. I was on a field trip with my high school students to Sharp Reservation, a wonderful campground up in Fishkill.
Yes, I know Sharp.
And it was a sleepover trip, so we camp overnight in cabins. And up until that point, I was fine. I had 3 great pregnancies prior to this.
Yeah.
But I had a hemorrhage in the middle of the night there, and that was kind of the start of it. And I didn't return back to work after that. a couple of stays in Putnam Hospital.
And no one warned you that girls aren't easy.
I know,
right?
but they did. They did tell me that.
They said, "You 3 boys, that's nothing. Where do you have the girl?"
It's very true.
And
Yeah.
sure enough,
Yeah.
a lot of joy, but
Oh, yes, yeah.
comes with certain other baggage.
Oh, yes, quite a lot, yeah.
So, but you got your darling daughter.
Yes.
And that's a good thing. So tell me, this book is really designed for mothers to say, it'll be okay.
Right.
Any particular part that you really feel good about knowing that you've been able to tell these mothers this information?
Well, really, the story when it started, my writing started when I was on bed rest.
Sure.
I was stuck in my bed. You know, my family was basically living their life. I was in a bed, so they were living their life kind of around me, and I couldn't participate.
Were you homebound at that time?
Well, I was in and out of the hospital. Sometimes I would be home, then I would hemorrhage and go to the hospital and have blood transfusions and be sent home for it to happen again. It happened 4 times total.
Wow.
Until she was born. I was at Putnam Hospital and then Westchester Medical Center for the end of my pregnancy. So I started writing in a notebook because that was my outlet at the time.
Yeah,
it was
wonderful.
sort of like therapy. It was just my way to release what I was feeling and all the stress of, you know, there was a very high chance that I wouldn't survive. I needed lots of blood transfusions and surviving the surgery and other complications that I won't get into. But also my daughter, we were told that she would be most likely born a micropreemie, which I had never heard of before.
Wow.
And didn't know anything about, and in fact she was. So we didn't even know if she would survive. So all of that was in our heads the whole time. So I started to write, and I found it really helpful.
Yeah.
And then after she was born, she spent 4 months in the NICU at Maria Ferrari Children's Hospital. And during the first month of her life, we couldn't even touch her or hold her. She was in what looks like a chicken
like an
incubator, but it's called an isolette for humans. So for that month, you'd go for the day or the night and not be able to touch your baby.
Oh, that's...
So I would write. I would write in a notebook, and I wrote everything the doctor said and what the nurses said and what she gained or lost that day and medication she was on and what I was feeling.
Yeah.
And about a month after she was home, I turned around and read my notebook, and I realized what an amazing story we had. And I realized that when I was going through the worst part of it, prior to that, I didn't have a lot of positive stories to keep me going. So I kind of wanted to write one for other families as a resource.
I've been very much involved in diary poems. It's a whole new thing that I've been working with where the protagonist is having difficulty and a therapist or a psychiatrist recommends therapy through writing and teaches the main character about diary poems. And then the story is told through this series of diary poems. So I've written Mary Loved Daisies, which is a story of a boy who loses a girlfriend at 13 years old. And he has to deal with death. So he goes through all of the stages of grief and writes poems about his experiences through that healing process. So I understand exactly what you're saying, and I work with writers all the time who want to write their memoirs, and I say the same thing. Believe me, it's a wonderful thing for your reader, but it's even more wonderful for you because it gives you a chance to just appreciate what you've gone through and how much joy you get from Joy.
Yes, that's true.
So Joy is doing well now. She is how old?
2. She's
2 years old.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Terrible too.
Yes, yes.
So did she start gaining weight right away? Or, I mean...
Well, after the 4 months she spent in the NICU, she came home a week after her due date, like a regular full-term baby would come home. She was 7 pounds, 8 ounces when she came home.
Wow, that's good. Yeah,
you know,
regular
we were
baby.
very lucky with her. She came home on just a few medications, didn't require oxygen at home. She was only off it for 1 or 2 days before she actually was released.
Wow.
But we are very lucky. You know, a lot of premature babies that were further along than her, even to 29, 30 weeks, and Joy was only 23, require many different medications and other interventions, and ours.
And I bet you didn't hold her at all when she finally came home. Huh?
Oh, please, I know, that's all we did. But nobody else was allowed to for germ reasons. That's a whole other thing. Yeah.
When my son was born, he was born with a very high bilirubin count.
Yes.
So the doctor said, we're going to have to do a special thing for him. And I was like, oh no, I could see it now. don't go near the baby. Don't. He said, do you have a front window facing the sun? I said, yeah.
Right.
I said, we have a bay window. He said, you need to sit in that bay window with the baby and let the sun hit the baby so that it could build a Billy. I said, wait, so you're telling me I have to sit in this rocket chair with this baby? I said, oh, gee, too bad.
Right.
And you know, you sit there and you stare at
Yes.
you. It's a miracle.
It is. It's amazing.
A baby is a miracle. So, in this baby is a double miracle.
She is. Yeah, she
Yeah,
is.
so a lot of things that you have to go through, a lot of stress, a lot of pain. This is a tough question. Were there moments when you just were afraid it wasn't going to happen?
Yes. Yeah, there were many
Yeah.
before
How'd you
her
get
birth
through
and
those? Is
after.
that the notebook, the writing?
Writing helped.
Did you start writing already?
I did on bed rest before having
Well,
her.
yeah,
I was writing
wow.
just for my own sanity. And
Yeah.
it was very stressful up until the day I had her. I didn't know if I'd come out of surgery. I mean, even though we knew it would happen, it was still an emergency. After my last hemorrhage, I required, I think my last surgery was like over 20 units of blood. So it was quite a scary
Yeah,
situation
because
for everyone.
you were going through physical stress,
own, yeah.
and you're worried about this new being.
Yes, and my other children at home, I was really
Yeah.
scared.
Now,
You
were
hate to
they
think
allowed
about
to come?
that. To see her?
Yeah. No. Well, to see you.
Oh, in the hospital? Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Oh,
we
good.
didn't bring
That's
them
good.
a lot because it was upsetting. I was hooked up
Yeah.
to machines.
Plus,
and
you have to be so
germs.
careful. Germs.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a scary thing.
Yes.
I remember with we had as a guest Sean Callahan, a kid I
Sweet
just
kid,
love.
yeah.
This kid is the epitome of strength and courage, and he was quarantined in his room, and he had to stay in that hospital because they were so worried
Yes.
about infection and germs, and even his parents were not allowed to see him for a while,
Yeah.
which is so.
It's heartbreaking.
Oh,
Yeah,
it's heartbreaking
difficult.
because the kid is in there. Again, I remember when my son, they needed. He was like maybe 3 years old, and he had pneumonia, and they had to get blood, and very much like me, he had no veins. You know, the veins were so tiny they couldn't get it, so they had to take him and give him. And I was standing there,
Yeah.
and he was going, Daddy, please
Yeah,
don't
it's
let them hurt
awful.
me. Please don't let
Yes.
them hurt me. And I was like, oh my God. And they grabbed me and pulled me out of the room. And from behind the door, I could hear him say, Daddy, why are you letting them hurt me? I was like, oh man. And it just tears your heart out. So I'm sure there were some heart-tearing moments.
There was one particular, she was maybe 2 weeks old, and she came down with some kind of infection. When she required to have a PICC line put in right by her artery, through her, like by her heart.
Wow.
And they told us, she might not make it. And unfortunately, that does, it does kill a lot of preemies. It's unfortunate. Well, any kind of bacterial infection, they can't handle that. But she recovered.
Yeah.
And there was a few other moments from there on, but as slowly over time, she got better.
Were there moments when you were writing that you said, whoa, too private, can't share this, not your business, my business? Did that ever cross, or did you always feel this was a story others needed to hear?
I think that the personal parts make it more real for the readers, because being on bed rest and struggling with a really small premature baby is emotional. And that's what you need to understand if you're going through it, that other people have also gone through it. So there's a lot of private emotional parts in there
Oh, yeah.
that I wouldn't normally share with people.
I mean, I don't want to be offensive, but my cat is bigger than that baby.
Oh, yeah, no, for sure.
I mean, that tiny, tiny baby, I mean, that had to be like so difficult and worrying all the time.
Yes.
Can this kid make it? And I mean, we've heard so many times about premature babies who have come into this world with so much stress and difficulty, and yet end up being conquerors of
Right.
whatever it is they go after. So it's a good sign. Sometimes we need to know what the bottom looks like before we can appreciate the top.
Absolutely.
Yep. So you were at the bottom.
We were.
Now you're at the top.
We are.
So the next 3 children you have,
Yeah, right. We're done.
Done?
We are done.
Yeah. All right, yeah. Well, you did it. You had your girl. You got your 3 boys. 3 boys crazy about her?
They're very good to her. Yeah, they're super brothers. They
Yeah,
may
she's
fight
their
with each
treasure.
other, and as soon as she comes in the room, they smile and they talk nice, and it's
But
amazing.
even now, your oldest is...
He's 9.
9.
Yeah.
Oh, my God. So you have 4 children. The oldest 9.
Yes.
You're going to heaven.
Hopefully.
Straight. You don't
Yeah.
pass go. You don't collect
Yeah.
$200. Straight. Yeah, it's difficult. I'm sure it must be difficult. Is it difficult not to favor your bundle of joy?
Well, it's hard, especially I think because she, at first, she still has like 5 interventions a week. She has speech, she has a teacher, she has physical therapy, and she's doing great, but she's behind. Typically, she's even further behind her due date, which is most preemies are. So
Wow.
she requires a lot. Her
Yeah.
appointments are dwindling, but we used to have a pulmonologist, once every 2 weeks, and a gastroenterologist, and all
Yeah.
these appointments, and a visiting nurse. So for
Yeah.
a while, everything was focused on her.
Yeah.
But we try our best to
Yeah.
do what we can
And you
with
have
the kids.
to make sure that you give the other 3.
Yes, a special time. and-
Yeah, their special time. I remember a good friend of mine, a writer, Roberta Silman, who is just an absolutely lovely person. And she was giving a talk to one of my classes. And one of the students said, Miss Silman, which one of your books do you like the best? She said, oh, well, that's a very good question. But I'd like to answer it from a mother's point of view. She said, it's like asking a mother which one of her children she loves the best. And the truth is, you love them all in a special way.
Right.
And that's the answer.
It
you
is.
know, each carries something to love. And even though joy is joy, the other 3 need what they need too. So it must be. And then to work full time, you have your own homework, and they have their homework.
They do, yeah.
So you have your hands full all along. So this wonderful book, we're going to hold it up for the world to see, From Hope to Joy. And you satisfied?
With the book?
Yep.
I love the story. I've gotten very positive feedback. It's helping from families that I hear. Initially, I was concerned that families that lost their preemies would be offended or have maybe their feelings hurt or be upset by a positive story. But I've gotten the exact opposite. I've gotten a lot of families to say, thank you for sharing that story for other
So
other
now
people.
you have a website?
I do.
Now, through the website, can they contact you if they want to talk to you about this? I'm sure there are mothers in this situation who are scared to death
Yes.
and might want it, or people who just felt so uplifted by your book that they want to talk to you. So you do have a website.
I do. It's www.micropreemie.net.
Okay, and I see we have that on the screen,
Yeah.
so that you're willing to talk to people.
I'm willing to talk, and November is National Prematurity Awareness Month, and November 17th is World Prematurity Day. So I'm hoping maybe at the show and just in general to raise awareness.
Now, if people want you to go and talk to their group, are you available
I do that.
to do
Yes,
that?
I do.
You do?
I speak to
Wonderful.
NICUs on occasion.
Oh, that would
and
be a
stuff.
great thing.
Yeah.
Because, you need a support system for whatever it is. And in this case, people don't...
You're just not aware of it. That's all.
They're not aware of it, and you don't become aware of it until it happens to you.
Correct.
And you always say, no, it's not going to happen, but it could. And what are the long-term, are there long-term fears with premature children?
Yes. One of them is eyesight. A lot of preemies
Really?
need eye surgery from the high amount of oxygen they're on when they're smaller. She's being followed so far. Her eyes are all right, but that could change.
God, yeah.
But really, the biggest thing with joy and many preemies are the lungs. They form as mostly scar tissue because they're being forced open and shut by a ventilator. And in Joy's case, she was on a ventilator for over 2 months.
Wow.
So when she gets a respiratory virus, it typically will turn into pneumonia. Since she's been home for 2 years, she's been back in the hospital for a week stay, a 2 week stay here and there with pneumonia. Whenever
that
she
must
catches,
kill you.
it's difficult because
Yeah.
a regular cold to you or I could put her in the hospital for weeks at a time.
Yeah,
And she has
yeah.
brothers, and we can't, have them move out when they're
I
sick.
know,
so-
and brothers are in that
Yeah.
that cesspool of germs
They change
called
their
school.
clothes. Yeah, they wash their hands. They do their best. But
I
really,
know.
it's RSV season, which
So
is
do you,
rigorous.
do you have to adjust your life a little bit with these guys? Make sure that they stay clean and they don't bring in germs or colds?
We do. I mean, the regular, they wash their hands when they come from school. They change their clothes.
You don't do the mask thing if
they're really sick, we'll probably put her in her room instead of have the three of
instead
them.
of
Not
isolate
be,
them,
yeah,
you
you know.
isolate her.
But we just keep her out of crowds, really. Typically during the cold and flu season, that's what we have to do, really.
Yeah, I mean, I know with my own, that when I was teaching, teachers sometimes eventually become immune.
Right.
But they become carriers.
Sure. Yeah.
And you walk into that classroom with all these little kids sniffling and wiping their noses and on you.
Yes.
And then you bring it home.
Yes.
And unfortunately, that happened several times where the kids got sick. They always just say, Daddy never gets sick.
Right.
How come we get sick? Because Daddy, unfortunately, becomes the carrier because, you become immune.
Yeah.
So, you have to be careful, especially being a teacher.
Yes.
You're there with those kids.
Yes.
High school, I imagine, is not as bad as...
We don't touch the kids or have to hug them,
Right, that's a good
often.
thing,
But there's still the doorknobs and the handles and all those things.
And the homework.
Yeah.
All those papers that they hand
Yes.
in. When you think about it, that does happen. So there's a lot of things you have to do. So how are you, as the mother of a preemie, different from other mothers?
I don't know if we're that different, but we're probably just more cautious and maybe.
Right. There are things
more
you have to be a little
might not
more
be
careful
the right
about.
phrase, but I think, when something happens like this or any kind of sickness or illness with a child, not just prematurity, you certainly, you're more thankful. You try your best to not be upset if the socks are on the floor or things aren't put away. It does sneak up on you at times, but.
When Jimmy in Kiss the Candy Days Goodbye, this is a story of a 12-year-old boy with diabetes. When he is diagnosed with diabetes, and the doctor says to him, Jimmy, you have diabetes. It means that your life is going to be a little different than other children. And he says, I don't want to be different. And she says, yo, Jimmy, you don't have a choice, buddy.
Right.
We're all different in some way.
Yes.
And we all have to adjust to our differences. And that is the truth. Billions of people in the world, and they all are different in some sort of way. Well, same in many ways, but different in some ways. So you have to understand your limits. You have to understand how to work within your differences. So Joy is going to have to take certain precautions that other kids won't have to do. But so are your other three.
Sure.
They're used
to it. Yeah.
I'm sure that there's things that they have to do. No way. You could sit here all day. You're not going to convince me that those three aren't different from each other. I'm sure they all have. They all have their special ways about them, and they have to work within themselves and with each other, and with Joy as well. So when they're told, no, you can't hold Joy today, they can't hold Joy today.
Yes.
So, all right. So that's really important. So the happy line is she's healthy and well now.
She is.
That's a good thing.
Running around.
And you're doing what you have to do. Any special foods or any special? What about the lung thing? You triggered my brain here. With the thing.
We used to get it was kind of a vaccination for this virus called RSV, which is typical, like a regular cold for you and I. Now that she's 3, she won't get it anymore. So I'm very concerned this particular season. It's her first season without that.
Yeah.
And then there's the enterovirus.
What about the
going
flu
around.
shots and things? I mean,
We all get the flu shot.
You all
she
get
gets
flu
that.
shots.
Yes. She actually had the flu last year, and she had the flu shot, but
wow.
It happens on occasion. It was a different strain.
Yeah.
I put her in the hospital for almost 2 weeks.
Is her immune system weaker than
Her
other
immune
children?
system isn't weaker, it's just her lungs. Anything respiratory,
Yeah,
she
you
can't
have to be
fight it.
careful.
So she'll get pneumonia,
Wow.
usually, but
Yeah.
she's tough.
Will that correct itself, or will she always?
She'll probably be someone with asthma, as an
Yeah.
adult, which many people are.
Yeah.
It's definitely not important to us compared to what could have happened to her.
That's right.
But she'll have to be careful. It remains to be seen. She can grow some new lung tissue, but it doesn't replace the scar tissue that she has.
Right.
So her lungs will most likely be weaker. But her immune system is fine. It's just
Yeah.
if she catches
That's
something,
great.
the lungs don't work as well.
So there are precautions. There are things she'll have to do.
She has the inhaler and nebulizer.
So besides the lung, anything else? I mean,
She'll probably, I don't want to say she'll be delayed because I don't know that for sure yet because she's only 2.
Right.
But, I mean, she's behind now. She could catch up. But everything is behind. You know, most preemies are acting their due date, if not a little before.
Is she tiny still? Or?
She's a little small for 2. I'm also not very tall, so it could be genetic as well. We'll have to see. And she's on steroids every day for her lungs.
What about the boys? Are the boys bigger than normal? Were they born all
they're
on time?
They're a little bit taller.
All 3?
Yeah, they were, and they're on the taller side for their age.
And they were born
full term, pretty much.
Full term and good weight and height.
No other issues there. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. So, what you've created was a jewel for your boys.
Yes.
She'll be the special princess.
She
probably.
is already.
Already she's a princess. I know. She'll also be the target of teasing. My family, we had 3 boys and a girl. I still tease my sister to this day. That'll never end. And if it does, she'll miss it.
Right, of course.
She won't admit it, but she'll miss it. So you've come a long way.
Yes.
And this book is a book of joy, but it's not all roses.
No.
There were some real difficult
Quite a few,
times. And can't say they're behind you yet, but some of the fears are behind you. And what is the bottom line message for mothers just like you?
I would say probably that it doesn't matter what's happening with your children, if they're sick with anything, whether it's prematurity or any other illness, don't give up because so many things can transpire that can give you your happy ending.
Yep, and that's the key. Don't give up. So now, here's the question of the day. This your last book?
I'm almost done with a children's book.
Yes,
I don't have a title, but
it's turned you on to writing.
It's in summary, it's about being pregnant on bed rest, told from the eyes of my then 3-year-old, because it was really difficult for him to have mommy in bed for 2 months.
Yeah,
so that's the premise of it.
There. Were they allowed? Were you allowed to hug?
They could be in the bed with me as long as they wanted.
Wondering about germs. And
no, when I was pregnant, it was
pregnant.
fine.
That was okay.
So, but it was hard on them.
Yeah.
A lot.
I can
especially
imagine.
my younger son at that time.
So the new children's book is about what?
It's about the 3-year-old telling basically the story about his mother being pregnant on bed rest and all the things they can do in her bed, and a fun story.
And it's fiction?
Well, it's based on my experience with him. With my 3-year-old. So.
Well, Jennifer, it has been wonderful. I applaud your courage. It's difficult. You still have a wonderful road ahead of you.
Yes.
Make way for a lot of joy in your life, and you understand that there are things that are going to happen that are going to throw you off. Don't give up. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for being here. Jennifer, I can't thank you enough for being here. Stay tuned. There's going to be other writers coming up. Thank you for being part of Let's Talk Writing.